During this training, we'll discuss child nutrition labels as well as product formulation statements. Throughout the course of the training, we'll discuss when a child nutrition, or CN, label or a product formulation statement is needed. We'll go over what a CN label or product formulation statement is, the documentation that you would be required to have on hand to credit these products, how to interpret the CN label to serve the correct amount for the different age groups, and then the pros and cons of serving CN labeled products. First off, we'll discuss when you would need to have a CN label or a product formulation statement. You would need to have one of these two options when you're serving a commercially prepared product that contains more than one ingredient and is not listed in the food buying guide. Examples would include commercially prepared chicken nuggets or patties, corn dogs, fish sticks, meatballs, lasagna, pizza, etc. If you are making the product on site from scratch, a CN label or product formulation statement would not be required, although we would look at the recipe to ensure that enough of the different components was included to meet the minimum portion sizes. This is an example of a CN label. You can see that it clearly identifies the contribution of a product toward the meal pattern requirements. In order to be able to put a CN label on a product, the product is required to go through an evaluation of its formulation by the USDA to determine its contribution toward meal pattern requirements. It is considered the gold standard as far as documentation would go because the crediting information has been verified by the USDA and is accurate. Now we'll go through the different aspects of a CN label and talk about what is required to be on a CN label. One of the most noticeable things is the CN logo, which is the distinct border around the wording of the label. The CN label contains the meal pattern contribution statement. In this case, it says that this 5-ounce pizza with ground beef and vegetable protein product provides 2-ounce equivalent meat alternate, half-cup serving of vegetable, and 1.5 servings of bread alternate for the child nutrition meal pattern requirements. It has a unique 6-digit product identification number in the upper right-hand corner. You can see in this example the numbers are all 0. If you saw that all of the numbers were zeros on a package of food you were buying, you would know that the CN label is not a valid label. The CN label also includes the USDA F&S authorization statement, as well as the month and year of the final F&S approval at the end of the authorization statement. Next, we'll move on to the product formulation statement. You might hear different names for the product formulation statement, such as product specification sheet. Know that as long as a document contains all of the required information, the name is inconsequential. Throughout this training, we will refer to it as a product formulation statement, or PFS. A PFS is a signed certified document from the manufacturer that demonstrates how a product contributes to the meal pattern. It is not verified by the USDA and therefore not as reliable as a CN label. Ultimately, you are the one responsible for ensuring a product meets the meal pattern requirements. Certain criteria would need to be met before you would accept a product formulation statement as valid. First off, it would need to be on company letterhead. The signature can be handwritten, stamped, or electronic. It would need to include the product name, product code number, and serving or portion size. The ingredients listed in the product are creditable and have a similar description as listed on the product label, as well as the descriptions of the food listed in the food buying guide. If the product contains an alternate protein product, such as soy concentrate, the manufacturer must provide supporting documentation that meets the USDA's requirements. The product formulation statement will include information to calculate crediting, and the calculations need to be done correctly. The creditable amount should never be rounded up. For example, if the total creditable amount of meat alternate was 0.99 ounce, it must be rounded down to 0.75 ounce. Also, the meat alternate credit cannot exceed the total serving size of the product. For example, a 2.15 ounce beef patty would be credited as 2 ounce meat alternate rather than 2.5 ounce, as 2.5 ounce would exceed the total weight of the product. Let's go through an example so that you can see what an acceptable product formulation statement would look like. You can see that we have an example of a product formulation statement for chicken corn dogs from Foster Farms, and an example of an ingredient label from the package of corn dogs. First off, you can see that this is on the Foster Farms letterhead and that it is signed. It includes the product name, product code, and portion size of the product. The ingredients listed are creditable and have a similar description as the ingredients listed on the product label. This PFS also provides the information to calculate crediting. In this case, it tells us that a 2.67 ounce serving of the above product, ready for serving, would contain 1.25 ounce of equivalent meat alternate and 1.25 ounce bread alternate when prepared according to directions. The creditable amount of ingredients is rounded down, not up, to the nearest 0.25 ounce. Also, the meat alternate credit does not exceed the total serving size of the product. This product formulation statement would be acceptable. Now that you're familiar with what a CN label and PFS is, we'll go over what documentation you need to have on hand when you are serving the products. Keep in mind that if you are serving a product that needs a CN label, it cannot be credited unless you have the documentation. An assumption that we see people make is that if they only credit one component of the item, they wouldn't need a CN label. An example of this would be if a center served chicken nuggets but didn't have a CN label for them, they might assume that since they know there is meat in the product, they'll credit the chicken nuggets as the meat alternate and serve some bread along with it to fulfill the grain requirement. Unfortunately, that is not in compliance with the regulations. You also can't remove the breading and weigh the breading and meat portion and count that as your crediting. With these products, there could be fillers and binders added that would affect the overall grain or protein content of the product. So a weight of the product wouldn't give an accurate picture as to what is really in the product. The ideal situation regarding documentation of CN labels is that any product you're serving that would require a CN label has a CN label on it. In this case, during a review, we would look in your freezer, note that you're serving a product that has a CN label on the box, and that would be it. The next best option would be to have a photocopy or photograph of the original CN label on the package. An example of this would be if you purchased a box of chicken nuggets with a CN label, but it won't fit in your freezer. So you take the bag of chicken nuggets out of the box and you recycle the box. Before you recycled the box, you would take a picture of the CN label and keep that on hand. You do need to make sure that the CN label that you have a picture of is for the exact product that you're serving. You couldn't use the picture of a CN label for one brand of fish sticks and then serve all different brands of fish sticks. You also can't take a picture of a CN label on one product that you purchased and assume that the product will always stay the same. Make sure to check every time you purchase the product. If you've been purchasing a specific product that has a CN label, and the next time you go to purchase it, it doesn't have a CN label, contact the manufacturer. If the product hasn't changed, they just took off the CN label off the packaging, you could still use the picture of the CN label that you've had on hand. If it has changed, the picture of that CN label would not be sufficient. The third option for documentation that would be acceptable for serving a CN labeled product would be to obtain the product formulation statement. As we talked about at the beginning of the training, the product formulation statement is not verified by the USDA and is therefore not as reliable as a CN label. You would be responsible for ensuring that the menu items meet the meal pattern requirements. You would need to verify the PFS before serving the product, and if the manufacturer changes the product, a new PFS would need to be obtained. Something that we see quite often is that child care providers will go online to look for CN labels or product formulation statements. This is a screenshot of something you might see while looking for documentation needed for a chicken nugget that you're wanting to serve. Unfortunately, this would not qualify as a PFS. While it does have the ingredients listed, it doesn't tell us what amount of the ingredients were added. There isn't a crediting statement, it's not signed or on official letterhead. You can see that this would not qualify as a sufficient PFS. This is another example of what you might find online when searching for a PFS. This example is for a pancake with turkey sausage patty. There is an item number, some information about the product, the weight, package size, product composition. It even states that it contributes 1 ounce to the meat alternate component and 1 serving of the grain bread equivalent. We are missing quite a few things here though. While it is on letterhead, it isn't signed. It doesn't tell us the ingredients and how much of the creditable ingredients were included in this product. Even though it has the information on how this product could credit, it doesn't provide us with the information to verify that their calculations are correct. So this would not be an adequate documentation to serve and credit this item. If you're purchasing a product and it doesn't have a CN label on it, you will want to contact the manufacturer to get the proper documentation. Next, we'll move on to calculating the serving size. Once you have the proper documentation, you still need to determine how much of the product to serve to meet the meal pattern requirements for the different age groups. We'll go through some examples together to give you an idea of how this can be done. If you are not the individual portioning out the serving sizes for the children, please make sure to pass this information on to your staff member who is in charge of portioning the serving sizes out. When they know the reasoning behind how much to serve each child, it will reduce the chance of an insufficient amount being served. In this example, you can see that the CN label says that 5 chicken nuggets would provide 2 ounce equivalent meat alternate and 1 ounce equivalent grains. Now let's look at the serving size requirements. There are 2 components in this product, so we'll be looking at the meat alternate serving sizes and the grain serving sizes. Let's start with the 6 to 12 age group for lunch or supper. This group would require 2 ounce of meat alternate and 1 slice of grain or bread. How many chicken nuggets would you need to serve to meet this requirement? You would need to serve 5. That would meet both the meat and grain requirement. Now let's skip to the 1 to 2 year old group. You can see that this age group needs 1 ounce of meat alternate and half slice of bread. This is half of the 6 to 12 age group requirement, so you could simply half the serving size of the 6 to 12 age group. Rather than serving 2.5 chicken nuggets, you could serve 3. Next, we'll go to the 3 to 5 year old age group to determine how much to serve them. You can see that they would need 1.5 ounce of meat alternate and the equivalent of half slice of bread. There are a few different ways that you could calculate the serving size for the 3 to 5 year old age group. One way is to determine how many ounces of meat alternate would be in each chicken nugget. You know that there are 2 ounces of meat alternate in 5 chicken nuggets, so divide 2 by 5. That equals 0.4. So you know that each chicken nugget has 0.4 ounce meat alternate. Now let's determine how many would need to be served to equal 1.5 ounce of meat alternate. Divide 1.5 by 0.4 to get this answer. You come up with 3.75. You would round up and serve 4 chicken nuggets to meet the meat alternate requirement. Remember, there are 2 components that we're looking at though. Would 4 chicken nuggets meet the grain serving size? We had determined that it would when figuring out the amount needed for the 1 to 2 year olds. You can serve more than the minimum portion size, just not less. So to sum up, for the 1 to 2 year olds, you would serve 3 chicken nuggets. For the 3 to 5 year olds, you would serve 4. And for the 6 to 12 year olds, you would serve 5. In this example, 1 corn dog provides 2 ounce equivalent meat alternate and 2 servings bread. Once again, we're looking at the meat alternate and grain components. We'll start with the 6 to 12 year old age category again. You can see that one corn dog would provide both the meat and bread serving sizes for the 6 to 12-year-olds. The 1 to 2-year-olds need half the amount of the 6 to 12-year-olds, so you could give them half a corn dog. Since a hot dog is a choking hazard for this age group, you would be cutting it up before serving, so it wouldn't be too hard to only give a half to the 1 to 2-year-olds. The 3 to 5-year-olds are always the tricky ones. They would need 1.5 ounce of meat alternate and half slice of bread. 1.5 ounce is 3/4 of 2 ounce. So you could give 3/4 of a corn dog and the meat alternate and bread component would be met. You could also give a whole corn dog. Again, you can give more than the minimum amount, but not less. Hopefully, these two examples have helped you see the general process to determine how much of a CN labeled product to serve. If you have a product where you're not sure how much to serve, please call your specialist and we can help you determine that information. Now that we've discussed all of the requirements surrounding CN labeled products, let's take a step back and look at the pros and cons of serving CN labeled products. Quite a few centers do like having CN labeled products on their menu because they are easy to prepare and the children often like the product. There are some cons associated with serving CN labeled products. First off, they are usually quite expensive. As was discussed previously, there can be binders and fillers added to the product. The more fillers that are added, the greater amount of the product that you would need to serve to meet the meal pattern serving sizes. For example, there are some products where you would need to serve 12 fish sticks to meet the requirements for the 6 to 12-year-old age group. This would get very expensive. Another aspect of CN labeled products to consider is that, depending on the product, they can be unhealthy options for the children in your care. A CN label on a product doesn't mean that it's of higher quality or healthier than other foods. You would want to look for products that don't contain unhealthy fats such as trans fats and that are lower in sodium. It's in the best interest of the children you care for and the staff who eat the meals to not serve any deep fat fried foods. Something that you'll also want to consider when serving a CN labeled product is that the documentation can be hard to obtain. Since the implementation of the National School Lunch Program whole grains requirement, fewer manufacturers are going through the process of getting their products CN labeled, so it is more likely that you would need to contact the manufacturer to obtain a PFS. The easiest way to deal with CN labeled products and the documentation that is required to credit them is to take these products off your menu. You'll want to look at each CN labeled item that you're serving and see if the pros outweigh the cons for serving that item at your center. To summarize, we've gone over when you would need a CN label or PFS, what they are, and what you need to have as far as documentation in order to serve and credit the products. We've also gone over how to calculate the serving sizes of CN labeled products, as well as some of the pros and cons of serving them. If you have any further questions about these requirements, please don't hesitate to call your specialist at the state office.